Thanks for coming, and thanks for coming to this meetup. So first up, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Nosh. I am part of the delivery and the future skills team, and I'd also like to do an acknowledgement to the country. RMIT University acknowledges the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners on the land on which the university stands. RMIT University respectfully recognizes the elders, both past and present. Before we begin, just some instructions. The toilets are just on to, when you exit, it's just on to your right. And you'll see the sign, both women and men's and ladies as well. And also, I'd like to do a quick welcome to our mentors, Rob Wild, Jack Golding, Rowena Beach, Paul Blake. I'll let them introduce themselves. Also, and Jenna, who's also a part of the Future Skills team. Jenna, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Nosh. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you for everyone for being here as well. So let's just start off by introducing yourself and explaining your background and your current role in the company that you're working at. So, Ro, do you want to begin?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Ro. I'm mentoring design thinking for innovation this term. I also supported customer experience, strategy and design last term. I run my own business in customer experience. Currently, I'm working in the not-for-profit space, managing a technology company, supporting those businesses to, I guess, scale up into the new era. And how do you support people, given NDIS has come into play, and other sort of community service programs. So it's quite an exciting time for that disability sector, with access to lots of services, and how do we connect and sort of match our customer base. So I got into that area because my daughter has autism, and so I've gone through that journey over the last 8 years. So I'm quite passionate about disability. So that's me.
Thank you. Paul.
Evening all, I'm Paul. I'm 50% of Splendid Studio. I am currently, we've done a bit of a swap. I'm currently mentoring the customer experience course, and previously mentored the design thinking course. So I have been in design in some form or another for the last 25 years, blimey. Interestingly, I'm not a trained designer. I trained in journalism. So interested in chatting with you folks around career change and stuff like that later on. I kind of got into design by accident. 1995, I was a desktop publisher when desktop publishing was a thing, and I was doing corporate brochures for people. And one of my clients said, "Do you design websites?" And I said, "Yes." And I've kind of been in design ever since. So maybe more on that later. But nice to see you all. Looking forward to chatting.
Thanks, Paul. Jack.
Yep, g'day. I'm Jack. I'm from country WA. For a long time, grew up on a small fishing island off West Australia, which is my most interesting thing about me. Went from there, studied math at UWA, Australian National University. Studied postgraduate data science at Harvard on their online postgrad course. Managed, by accident, as everyone does in marketing analytics, to fall into a marketing role. And I've been doing that for 7 years. So my focus at the moment at RACV, the insurance company, membership run group, is to support the digital team in the implementation of digital tracking methodology. So a lot of that's Adobe Analytics. In the past, I've tried to justify and provide some insight into in an online wagering company's $100 million budget, which is quite interesting. and I run a conference here in Melbourne on marketing analytics and do a bit of freelance work in digital marketing as well.
Cool. I'm Rob Wild. Thanks for coming down tonight. I'm one of the mentors in digital marketing, and I currently work as Senior Manager of Member Engagement and Experience at AIA. That's an insurance company for those of you who aren't aware. I actually studied an arts degree out of school, and then my girlfriend at the time was studying law, and I thought that looks easy and fun. I'm going to do that. So I did a law degree, and it was not easy and it was not fun. So I finished that, and I thought I was going to become a lawyer. So I went through the process of going to the Supreme Court, lodging my application. I worked at the federal court. I worked with a lot of judges for a number of years and had a vision to be a family law barrister until my cousin who worked in media said, I think you'd be better served in advertising. So I pivoted into advertising. I went into a graduate program and was placed in an advertising agency, worked in advertising for about 6 or 7 years, and have spent the last 3, 4, 5 years working in tech companies and now at AIA in marketing. So it's been a long journey, but we've got there. So I can probably share a few stories tonight if you like.
Thanks, guys. That's some really interesting stories of how you got there. What is your biggest career failure, and how did you turn that into an opportunity to learn and grow? And you probably answered a bit there, Rob, but you can think of another one.
I've got many, yeah.
Yeah.
I think early on in my career, probably I was a little bit too enthusiastic, and sometimes that enthusiasm can be implied as maybe arrogance or coming from a bad place, which it certainly wasn't. And I noticed over time that potentially what is more important is not proving your intelligence at every turn, but proving that you're a capable person who is good to get along with and good to work with, because ultimately that's what you do most of the time, is you have to liaise with people and socialise with people. So I worked very heavily on trying not to be the smartest person in the room and just being someone who was respectful and got the most out of other people.
Thank you. Jack?
Yeah, I've got a couple as well, as it so happens, being human. So I think coming out from uni and with my studies, certainly the thing that if I went back to when I was 17, coming out of high school, I would tell myself I had a mentality that I need to be a small fish in a big pond, in terms of I need to study the hardest courses possible, and even if I'm the dumbest person in the room, I've at least got that status symbol. So that's why I studied pure maths up to the PhD level at Australian National University. And I, certainly was the dumbest person in the room. And, please don't ask me any math problems. So and I guess what I've learned from 7 years of working now is showing initiative is way more important than being the smartest person in the room. And I guess the foresight of that is when I was in my first year of uni, everyone that did super well in high school just dropped their bar so low that and it was literally that they burned themselves out getting into university degree, and now they're like, well, I mean, now it's P's get degrees, right? I'm going to get like 50% in every course. I'm going to get my job, and then I'm going to get a mortgage or a house, and that's life over, right? It's just on cruise control. If you want to do really well, it's not a case of being the smartest person in the room. It's just showing the most initiative. For me, that's doing things like, running that marketing analytics conference, which has given me a massive network. It's given me like international speaking opportunities. I guess another one similar to that is, and I'm very privileged that my parents were able to support me, but taking massive risks in terms of like moving from Perth to Melbourne and like just moving all the time when I probably didn't have the financial stability of doing that, and I certainly, I ended up getting made redundant because of some bigger company issues and getting stuffed financially really badly, and taking a few years to recover from that. But luckily, I had a 0% loan from my parents to be able to at least stay afloat there. Maybe that's just some more general life advice. But yeah, at work, certainly, just being able to show initiative has been what has got me places, and where I've had shortcomings and where I've ended up getting in trouble, I guess, at work. And my worst mistakes have been when I haven't shown initiative and I've just let things slide, and then, maybe someone will forget about this report or thing that they want me to do, and haven't been on top of things.
Thank you. Paul,
Yeah.
any value to add?
Mistakes I have made. I've got the room for the rest of them. Yeah, I think one that springs to mind is first website in 1995. Then someone had the foresight to invent Dreamweaver as a piece of software for building websites. Right now, totally defunct. It's like this is going back to like almost internet prehistory. And I was making really good money training people how to use Dreamweaver. And I was working through a training company, and I was always booked like 6 weeks in advance. And when like 1 week dropped off, then another week dropped into my diary, and this kind of rolled for 18 months. And awesome, I'm set for the rest of my life. And then towards the end of I guess it would have been like 1998, 1999, the 6 weeks suddenly turned into 5, into 4, into 3, into 2, into 1, and bang, nothing. And this was around the time of the first kind of tech crash, and everything just went off the end of a cliff, right? There was no work. And I hadn't saved any money. I hadn't seen the end coming. So all of a sudden I'm in a hole. So I actually at that point took a job where I could learn HTML on the job. So I actually learned how to properly code websites on someone else's coin. But I think the key learning there, and I think it's the thing that stood me in good stead for the rest of my career, is this: we're in a constant state of change, and the technology that surrounds us at the moment is exacerbating that pace of change. So, like growing up, there'd be pictures of people in the paper who'd done like 30 years service at a particular company, right? And they'd be having a handshake and a gold watch and everything's lovely. Well, none of us are going to do 30 years in a career anymore. We're probably not going to do no more than 2-3 years. There's going to be a change. Someone's going to invent something new. So the thing that I took away from that was around, I've really got to keep on top of this. I've got to try and understand what the next thing coming down the pipe is. I've got to understand how I can transfer the skill set that I have at the moment to be pertinent for whatever that new thing is, and be adaptable to change and just not get caught out like that again.
Thank you. Ro, your biggest failure in your career and how you
Again, where do I start?
Yeah.
But I guess I carry on from Paul is that, it's so good to keep on learning because change is just happening rapidly in technology. So if we don't keep on learning and keep ourselves updated, we do fall behind. I've found that in my latter years, I've learned that I need to constantly keep myself up to date in the field that I work in, because otherwise I'm just irrelevant. But look, I grew up in Tassie, on the west coast of Tassie, on Cradle Mountain National Park. So, talk about rural. I was there.
Beautiful life, right?
Gorgeous part of the world. And then we went to Thailand for 3 years and lived in the jungle on the border of the northwest corner of Thailand, in the middle of nowhere. So my education was via correspondence. So when I ended up we moved back to Tassie, finished high school, and I went to TAFE at the time because they didn't do, I'm showing my age now, but there wasn't a business degree available when I finished year 12. So
If it makes you feel any better, there was no internet. The internet hadn't been
no, the
invented
internet hadn't
when
been
I left
invented
college.
either.
So,
No. And it was 20 cents in a phone box, or you basically do the reverse call and 3 rings and hang up, and so mum would go come and pick me up. Really showing my age now. Kind of weird story, but I needed to get out of a small town, so I went to another small town, New Zealand, and I worked on the ski fields and I loved it. And I actually worked in guest services, and that was really my first foray into sort of customer experience and how to engage. And if people were angry or not happy with their experience, how do you sort of get them back on board? And I really enjoyed that. And from that, I got an opportunity, literally a tap on the back, to say, there's a job with Air New Zealand in Melbourne and they want you to come back. So I accepted this job with Air New Zealand and I started studying part-time Bachelor of Business, major in marketing at RMIT. Before online existed, so I would come into this building. It looks really nice now. It wasn't nice back then. You've come a long way. Late at night, there'd be 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, lectures, tutorials, weekends. And I did that for 3 years, and really trying to sort of update myself on industry knowledge. That gave me an opportunity to actually move to the US and do some amazing things, which I could talk about later. But what I found along the way was that I think, from the learning phase, that I thought that getting a bachelor degree was enough. And that was it. And I didn't need to do anything more. And I sort of stagnated for a few years until I sort of went back and started updating my skill set. So for me, my greatest failure of not being able to move forward was that I wasn't sort of engaging myself and innovating myself from a learning perspective. And so I learned that pretty quickly, and you did some online courses and started updating myself. I'm doing a Juris Doctor now with RMIT online. So, I think it's really good to just sort of keep yourself in touch with not necessarily your industry, but your passion, because the greatest failure that you can have in life is not learning.
Completely agree there. Building on that, so your current line of work, what are the biggest trends and skills that are required at the moment that these guys can benefit from?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm working a lot, as I said, with not-for-profits who really don't have a great tech stack. Like they're using Access databases from years old. They might have a business Gmail account. They might have Excel spreadsheets. I'm famous for saying 0 spreadsheets. Like, no. There's no sort of central point of information about a customer. So if I want a whole profile of a customer, I can't access that with any of my, systems and processes that I use. So trying to sort of move organisations into, let's have one framework. You might have a couple of systems, but let's sort of plug that all into one central point of information. So I work a lot with CRMs, from Salesforce to Zoho to Microsoft Dynamics, and customer journey mapping. And people sometimes think that's a bit fluffy, but at the end of the day, you need to understand the experience and the journey that your customers have to really then adapt your service or your product to those people. So I find that that's a really particular area that is of focus at the moment. And I've worked for airlines, I've worked in finance and insurance, in lots of different industries, and it's all been the same. No one's really understood the customer journey. They just made assumptions at the time. Take a step back, understand what your customer wants, and then deliver to expectation, rather than say, this is just industry standard. Well, this is what our SLA says, which happens a lot. So I think you need to adapt your business constantly to your customer expectations.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, what's the biggest trend in your current line?
I do all the fluffy stuff, right?
That's okay.
So yeah, I'd echo a lot of what Rose said there around the smart companies are the ones that are putting the customer at the heart of their decision making. There's a growing body of evidence that proves that companies that invest in design see return on that investment, that they outperform companies that don't show any, don't perceive any value in design. There's work from McKinsey and all of the other major consulting firms around that. Now, obviously, no disrespect to any of those intended, but they're all trying to sell you something, right? So you've got to look at that with a critical lens. But the weight of evidence is undeniable that applying design thinking, applying a human-centered design process to your business pays dividends, and companies are waking up to that. Mid-90s, everyone wanted a website, wasn't quite sure why, but they wanted one. Mid-2000s, everyone wanted an app, weren't quite sure why they wanted one, but they wanted one. Now everyone wants some design thinking magic thrown in. They're not quite sure why, and but they want it. So that leads to some confusion. The design community is really bad in that it always invents new terminology for stuff. So you've got user experience and customer experience and human-centered design and design thinking and service design and strategic design and. So in terms of trends, I think it's on the design community to clarify and crystallize that so we can better connect with businesses. But certainly the major trend is businesses waking up to the fact that rather than starting with the technology, it ends with the technology, right? So if you're doing massive digital transformation, if you're putting in a huge CRM system, you don't want to just replicate the way you do things at the moment and hard bake those current processes into the rollout of the CRM. Otherwise, you're going to drop multi-million dollars in rolling it out and then multi-million dollars in taking it apart and putting it back together again. So start by understanding the business and understanding the customers and use that to inform the outcome. And the smarter companies at the moment are holding on to that and grabbing hold of that, and hopefully will keep me in work for a few more years.
I'm sure Kodak would have liked to have heard that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Blockbuster, Kodak,
That's an example,
you
right?
know, and on and on and on. Yeah.
Actually, there's still a Blockbuster in WA. I saw in the paper the other day.
Oh, I think it was just closed down in Morley.
Oh, it has.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I saw it. It was the last one. I'm like, oh.
I thought you were going to say that my employer might be for Blockbuster.
Steady.
And they'd work 50% of the time, right? Because they were all scratched. No?
Yeah, but Blockbusters, yeah.
Take it back. Sorry, I interrupted.
Jack, what's the current trends in marketing
Yeah,
analytics?
so I was going to say, just get technical, get really technical, work on commercial acumen, and then you're set. You can charge whatever you want. You'll always be in demand. Everyone, well, you'll be happy. But then I remembered I gave a talk at a conference where I looked at everyone who attended the conference I organised in Melbourne, who work in marketing analytics, and then I compared that to looking on Seek for a couple of weeks, what are the keywords in job descriptions? So what type of skills do employers actually want people to have in marketing analytics roles? And then at the conference, I asked people, well, what do you think the top 8 skills were? And so top 8 skills, people were mentioning quite technical things, SEO, e-commerce, different CMS systems, Salesforce, CRMs, Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, DMPs, like jargon. But it turns out what the employers want, before that, on people's LinkedIn profiles, they're definitely talking up the marketing skills a lot. SEO, digital marketing, whatever that means, AdWords, all these different, quite technical, operational type skills. You look at what the employees want, it's Agile, so it's technology like Jira, knowing how to work in or Scrum or extreme programming, or at least what a Kanban board is. So that new way of organisational thinking, stakeholder management, it's commercial acumen. There actually wasn't any mention of any of the really particular digital marketing skills at all in the top 10 skills that employers were looking for based on the data that I pulled. Certainly it appears almost like a very weird answer. At least at the moment, I'm sure that's what it's going to be like in the next 5 years. The commercial acumen and stakeholder management and being able to, I was saying earlier that I used to work in a product team, right? And what our GM would say is that product have 100% of the responsibility to get something across the line, a project across the line, but 0% of the authority to make that happen. And that's where the interpersonal skills come in, to be able to get people to give you some of their precious time of the day. Because at least the last 3 jobs I've had, everyone has 40 hours of work to do a week, and not many people like to work extra than 40 hours a week. So taking any time of them is quite precious, but being able to talk to them in their language and have empathy is how you get that stuff done.
Such a focus on soft skills, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's sort of, everyone went through that phase of you got to have the tech and everything behind you. Now it's very much soft skills as well.
And the organisational skills as well. So I would say with marketing analytics, there's only so much technology you can learn, and you can actually learn heaps, but you get much more ROI figuring out processes and how to deal with people.
Yeah.
I'm going to use an analogy because I love using analogies. One of my mentors once said to me that to be a good marketer, you need to be almost an orchestra conductor. So you need to stand in front of what are many different people from many different disciplines and be able to, I suppose, make beautiful music from all these different people that have differing interests and differing, I suppose, outcomes they're looking to achieve. And it struck a chord with me because on the unlikely chance I've been to the orchestra, when they warm up, it sounds horrendous because they're all just doing whatever they want and it just sounds horrible. When you get the conductor there and they start to make sense of what's going on, you get something that's quite amazing. And you can talk about, there's this trend towards customer, which I 100% agree with, and I've seen that at my own work. We talk more about customer more than we ever have before. But for my role, the thing that I do on a day-to-day basis is talk to my data scientists, my CRM team, I talk to our CX team, I talk to legal, I talk to marketing specialists, member services. I speak to people from probably 10 to 15 different disciplines who in their own capacity are experts at what they do, but I need to make sense of what they're doing and how that relates to the person over here that is an expert at something else to make an outcome which is best for the customer. So I suppose that I would say when I communicate with them, so when I sit down in a meeting with a data scientist, I better have a fair idea of what I'm talking about because he's going to run me around in circles. And he did when I first started. I was there going, I don't know what's going on here. And with the CRM team, I needed to get up to scratch on the software they use so that I could understand the capabilities and the restrictions of what they do. But there comes a limit where I don't need to do their job. I simply need to understand what is a reasonable expectation of them when they do their role and what is maybe me pushing the boat out too far because I simply don't know what kind of the restrictions are. So my advice in terms of trends for workplaces would be get up to speed on all the different areas you're going to intersperse with, write it down on a piece of paper and go, here's the 10 key stakeholders I'm going to visit regularly and have an understanding of what they do. But most importantly, and this was advice that came from my CMO, she said to me, before you understand your role, understand the business that you operate in. So the first thing I did was understand AIA in the business. Where was it founded? Where are our stakeholders internationally? They're in Hong Kong. What's our business structure? What's our revenue structure? What products do we offer? What do we used to offer that we don't offer anymore? And it's really useful because it means that when I walk into a meeting and I come up with suggestions, I'm not going to rehash old ideas that have been killed off. I'm going to come up with new things and I'm going to have a better understanding of what the business is looking to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years.
Awesome. Thank you. What jobs do you think will currently be created in the next 5 years that don't exist? I'm asking you to be a fortune teller now.
Oh, wow. Just constantly changes. If you asked me this question 5 to 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said I'd be working in customer experience and design thinking, because they weren't terms that were made up, right?
Yeah.
It was just good old customer service. That's what we do, trying to deliver a service or a product and meet a need. So I think it's difficult to answer that question, but, adapt. Just constantly adapt to change. And, we hear this quote over and over again, Richard Branson say yes and work out how to do it later. Big fan of that. And probably for me, in the last sort of 15 years of my career, I've always said yes and then literally worked out how to do it later. And I really enjoyed that. I've enjoyed the challenge and have had the ability to step up and then accelerate my career because of that. So, I think don't limit yourself to a position description. Don't limit yourself to, your existing learning. Just keep a really open mindset, constantly engage with your customers and listen to your customers. I love just sitting there and just watching customers interact or listening. So, if you're in a call centre, double jack and just listen to conversations, because you'll get a better feel for where your business is going and what your customers want from those conversations than you will from anything else, to be perfectly honest, because they're going to dictate what they want, and then that will dictate what the business needs, and then you'll grow and adapt to that. So roles will sort of step away. New roles will be developed around, obviously, those changes. I guess I've seen, I've got 2 children, so one's 10, one's 14, so grade 5 and grade 8. And the adaptation of technology has been quite amazing in their learning experience. So prep, they've got an iPad. They've got a learning management system. Everything's online now. They don't have textbooks anymore.
What?
I know. So, no more secondhand sales of textbooks or anything like that. We're not doing the sort of the parent swap back in the day. So it's a really interesting experience to see how the kids are adapting to the different, even, the learning facets that are occurring in their education. And those fields that are opening up, they're talking now about, all sorts of STEM, big in careers, technology. So they're even doing design thinking, robotics, all those things that, in primary school and secondary school. So it's going to be quite amazing to see how that will adapt into business, as this generation gets older, comes through, whether it's university, come out of year 12 and then into business. And they'll have some great innovative ideas as well. So I can't give you an exact answer of, what roles are there, but it's that open mindset, isn't it? Growth mindset is really important.
Thank you. Paul, what do you envisage for the future?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Paul, where's your crystal ball?
But there's that thing about, if you want to predict the future, look at the past and all, all that type of stuff. So I guess, a practical example, I think at the heart of all of this is back to that thing about having a transferable toolkit and working out how you can reapply the skills that you already have and how you can adapt or sharpen that skill set that you have into new things as they manifest themselves. So, like practical example, designing for speech, right? So voice controlled. I guess it isn't an interface. Systems, voice. So brand new, right? No one's ever done it before. But as I kind of looked into it a little more, it's like, there's a whole bunch of stuff there that are actually chunks of things that I have done before, in the same way as the iPhone appears in 2007. We'd never designed for it before. We had to start designing for it, right? So all we could do was call upon the skill set that we already had and adapt it and learn as we went. So speech. Personality of any chatbot or any speech interface is really important, right? Well, that's actually that personality angle is a lot like tone of voice, and I very well versed in defining tone of voice and natural language and all of that type of stuff. Okay, so there's a bit there that I know. And then in terms of interaction with voice activated systems, well, there's actually like a keyword analysis in there. So if you're speaking to or typing into an interface which is needing to respond to you, that interface is actually analyzing what is input in terms of keywords. And so that's actually around information architecture and information management, which is stuff that I know about. Based on those keywords, those responses elicit activities. Well, that's actually just process flow, and something else that I know about, right? So what can look whole new and scary and never been done before, if you pick it apart, there's probably a whole bunch of stuff in that you already know about or is akin to something you already know about. And it's like, okay, well, I've probably got a handle on a bit of that. So if I go away and upskill on this other thing, I could probably have a good old go at doing this, right?
I still use tone of voice. Is that old school?
I figure. But
I use that too. So
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
so
it's still a thing,
I
right?
was like,
trendy.
I still use it.
It's like UX writing. It's like all of a sudden everyone's a UX writer. It's like, well, I never heard of that before, but you pick that apart. I mean, that's most of the skill set around that is stuff that's been around with other names in other environments for a whole heap of time. So, I guess in summary, don't think about what you can do rather than what you can't do. Don't be scared just because it's called something new. As I say, there was no internet when I left college. There was dial-up. I was designing for Internet Explorer and Netscape Navigator on dial-up in 1996. None of that exists anymore. They've invented broadband. Someone's invented the smartphone, and so on and so forth. And so I've managed to apply stuff that I already knew, upskilled in areas that were adjacent to it that I needed to know, and I've managed to make a living for 25 years, right? So all I can say about the future is look critically at your toolkit, work out which things in your toolkit are applicable to this seemingly new and scary thing that's actually probably something that's been around for ages. And what do you need to do to adapt? What do you need to change to get on top of the 20% that's brand new? So I don't know what's coming down the pipe, but that would be my advice in terms of meeting it head on.
Thank you. Jack?
Yeah, that was an interesting point around, how new concepts come about that are essentially just rebranded old concepts. One example I can think of is that I was talking about today at work was conversion rate optimization. So this idea that you can redesign certain panels and optimize in, I guess, a tactical manner certain components of a website to optimize for a commercial outcome. For example, one common thing people do in design, which our design thing people might hate, is change all buttons orange. Orange is a colour that must have some type of emotion attached to it.
Yeah, don't do orange.
Don't do orange.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
Joking. Sorry.
But so those are type like micro optimizations that you could do, and I found it hilarious that for us and many companies outsource dev work, right? And that's why I'm a bit, I guess, unsure about promoting. Everyone needs to learn to code, and that when it's something that so many businesses have, so many businesses have failed to outsource, but so many businesses still do it as well. And when you look at what's happened in the project management methodology, this move to Agile, something very interesting I read this week was a critique on Agile, or just for everyone's knowledge, Agile project methodology is planning in small blocks are called sprints. So 1, 2, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, if you're at Telstra, of work, right? And what the critique
20 minutes
said,
in before someone bags Telstra, that's quite good going, isn't it?
So what the critique said about Agile was Agile takes responsibility by, instead of going away, building up requirements, doing stakeholder interviews for a project, like let's say I wanted to implement a new CRM, that might end up with a design spec this big or this thick. People try to break that down into blocks and work on these iteration of multiple sprints. The idea being at the end of these 1-2 weeks, we deliver one part of a feature set, and then keep building up on that. So the analogy is with a car, you might build a go-kart in 1 week, and then a electric car the next week, and then maybe get a petrol car with motor working but with no exterior in the 4th week. And 5th week you might build the exterior but it's got no seats, and then building it up like that rather than and still at the end of every week you've got a car that can drive you from A to B, but it's not very comfortable doing it. And the critique was that this agile way of building systems takes responsibility away from project managers and puts stress onto developers a lot more, which is quite interesting to think about. That at the end of the day, it means there's less of a burden and responsibility on a project manager to ensure that the design spec's right. Because when you're only working in 2 to 4 week blocks, you've got a lot of time to think, oh, I'm doing something wrong, but I'll tell everyone at the next 2 weeks, and then we can just change what we're doing. So, yeah, I'm a bit hesitant on pushing technological skills, and at the end of the day, you need to be able to sell these technological skills and data processing skills to management senior management that generally doesn't understand it or doesn't want to understand it. One thing we were looking at today was there's in the software we use, there's a setting which lets the software decide what's the best experience to give to a user. And for me, I thought, well, there's no transparency in that. And that's what a lot of senior people want, is transparency. Why, when I go to this website, do I get this experience instead of this experience? And being able to explain the method behind the madness is quite important. Going from that into marketing, I was talking to a friend who runs a marketing agency, and he's super worried that so he sells Google and Facebook ads. It's pretty much exactly what he does.
Oops.
And so he's very worried that Google and Facebook's platforms are going to get so smart that you don't need someone flipping all the dials every day, which is what all of his staff do, is change the levers on how much we're going to bid for this ad versus this targeting method, all this stuff that Google will remove the need from that from intelligent bidding and those type of systems. My thought on that, and what reassured him, is that generally marketers don't have a whole lot of, a burden to understand the commercials behind a business. The same with developers. And I think the most important roles in the next 5 years will be much more commercially focused. For example, when I worked in online wagering, the trading desk would tell us, we want this product displayed on our homepage banner because it's what makes us the most money. And my argument to that would be, well, how do we know that it makes us the most money with that placement? How do we know that there's not something better? And then even thinking of questions like, that raises the question, how much is each bit of real estate on our homepage actually worth, and how do we maximize that? And thinking about your website, your digital assets, and your marketing in a commercial manner like that, one is really easy to explain to stakeholders because everyone talks money, and two, really important because, like, at the end of the day, a lot of businesses, if they don't make money, they're not going to be around in 5 years. So, in summary, commercial skills, I think, are the most important thing most important roles in the next 5 years will be definitely commercially focused, more so.
Thank you, Jack.
Question.
Yes.
Who in the room works in marketing, just out of interest? Okay. And is there a focus on ROI, measurability at the moment? Yeah. I've found in the last 5 years there's been a huge movement towards everything. There's got to be a return on investment.
Yeah.
So I've found from a marketing perspective that I've got to prove that activity is giving a return in some way. It's conversion rate. So it's lead to opportunity to actual, purchase. What's that conversion rate? How much does that cost us? We've got to get the lead cost down.
Yeah.
It's quality versus quantity as well. I certainly find as well in the customer journey, it's that lifetime value of the customer as well. So how long are they with us? How much are they purchasing? What value monetarily we're getting out of that? I've found that there's been a lot more detail in the reporting that I've had to provide than I ever have in the past. There wasn't as much sort of focus on that. It was like, okay, Ray, you got a budget of 100,000, go out and get 100 customers. That was it.
Yeah, and you
it's
notice
a lot more detailed now. Yeah.
a lot of things that a lot of metrics that you'd have in call centers. It's like because that freaks me out. Seeing some of the numbers that call center people, with all the metrics they're on, number of calls answered per hour, that would give me so much anxiety to work in a position, where I've got my boss can see 100 numbers on my performance, but marketing is facing the exact same thing now.
Yeah, absolutely. How long are those conversations gone for? And what's converted out of a conversation? How many touch points have you had in that journey to convert? All that language is starting to come up. But from an Agile perspective, I find an Agile and a Prince 2 or a PMBOK works well together. Agile's great, but it's bloody expensive because you're iterating the whole time. If you've got a big budget, go for it. But the thing is, with small sprints and iteration, you're constantly changing. So then you're constantly developing, constantly prototyping and testing, which costs money. So I would err on the side of caution, just only from my experience, and try and adapt a couple of methodologies. So start with your scope and requirements around that sort of Prince 2. But Agile might just be in the testing that we can make tweaks and changes. Just from the BAU side. I found most businesses can't cope with full Agile because they don't have the budgets. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Is industry using AI tools not just for top bots, but for improving the performance of marketing?
Not as much as the McKinseys and that of the world would would say that they are. There's
like Watson, IBM, the marketing automation that's starting to get the AI.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Get the data.
The next 5 years, probably AI will be taking over the world.
I completely agree.
Yeah, the only job we'll have left is sharpening sticks to fend off the androids that are bigger and smarter than us and are coming after us.
Yeah.
But I think in terms
not
of
that I'm apocalyptical at all.
In terms of marketing, if you go to Amazon, Amazon has to be one of the best AI companies in the world, right? I think we can all agree. And look at how poor their recommendations are. If you buy look at a company like I'll pick on another one, OPSM, right? When I look at glasses, I go into the store and buy a pair of glasses, which the sales cycle of that is pretty short. Generally, broken my glasses, I need to buy a new pair of glasses in the next couple of days. I'll go in, look at some online, go in the store, buy it, do an offline conversion, but I'll get ads for as long as my cookie exists in Google's ad platform. And there's another, one of the top AI companies. So that's why I'm very critical of AI and how well it's performed. If I'm getting ads for glasses when I bought them 30 days ago, like how really good are your AI and your systems? And we're talking about Google and Amazon and the biggest companies in the world here.
Yeah.
So I would say the destination hasn't changed. So what as marketers we're trying to do hasn't changed. I mean, for my company, it's about getting people to purchase insurance policies, or in my stream, it's about getting people to engage with the program they're invited to be engaged in. The tools that I have available to do that now are much broader than they were 5 years ago. When I started in advertising, the proposal we used to go to clients with, including RACV, was get a billboard, get a TV commercial, and a couple of radio ads, you're done. And now it's become, that was before Snapchat, then Snapchat came out and they took me out for lunch and they said, you should use us, and here's why. And the first question I said to them was, but what ad units do you have that I can use? And they said, oh, we don't have any yet, but we're going to, and they'll be great. And what they're struggling with as a business is monetizing their platform, because they've got a lot of young people that use the platform, but they use it for one thing and one thing only, and that's to communicate with their friends, and sometimes to send pictures that we shouldn't talk about. But ultimately, I think as marketers, we like to play everywhere. We like to go, oh, shiny new thing, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'll be over there as well. Oh, great. Oh, artificial intelligence, great. Like I've had consultants come into the office and talk to me about, look, this is what you need to do. You should do this. You should allocate some budget towards that. And ultimately speaking, until the product is perfect, I'm not going to do that, because you risk impinging the customer experience. And ultimately, the destination hasn't changed. I mean, yes, you've got programmatic ad units, and that's fantastic. And I think programmatic is where we needed to go as a media industry, because if fundamentally we gave away too much money to media agencies to simply click and book something, which really can be completely automated. But take it a step too far, you get experiences like the OPSM example, where robots or machinery are only so good, and they work to a rational basis that you give them. But ultimately speaking, you need a human behind that to go, does that make sense? Does that not make sense?
Yeah.
And
that's where the commercial skills come in.
And look, I think for any business, like Qantas has one of the most advanced marketing automation platforms there is. Yet, ultimately speaking, they live or die on the in-flight experience, quite literally in the last few days. But sorry, that's crass. But I think that until we don't communicate with each other, and we never go out of the house, and we live in a cyborg world where everything gets delivered and that's it, there's always going to be a role for human beings. There's always going to be a role for customer service.
Yeah, sharpening sticks and fighting off the
correct.
That's right.
So
off the androids.
I think that sometimes my warning for all of you would be, don't get too obsessed with the shiny new things, and focus back on what it is. If you are in marketing, to Rose's point earlier, then I would urge you to think, what is the greater purpose that we're here for? I do 100% agree that ROI has become a stronger part of the conversation. You can't simply throw money at a fan and go, look, money's gone everywhere. You need to be able to say, here's why we've done what we've done. And sometimes you can't. And that's the battle of brand versus tactical. How do you support a brand while at the same time drive leads, drive conversions, drive app downloads, drive whatever it might be? And being comfortable with the subject matter is the way to get there. But ultimately, people are no different to what they always have been. We're all falling in love. We all want to buy a house. We all want to have babies and do this stuff. So yeah, hasn't changed.
Really?
Yet. Well, some people, the majority, and I focus on the majority.
I miss that memo.
I would say though, take a risk. It depends on where your business is at, and also your risk appetite in your business. But sometimes it's actually okay to take a risk and be an early adopter, because that might be the difference between you and your competitors as well. So careful analysis, but sometimes adapting a very new technology, and you might be a new tester, might actually enhance your business. I managed an IT business a long time ago. I'm not going to say the year, so I'll give away my age.
I've already gone there, right? I'm patently the oldest person here, so you'll find.
Really?
Yeah.
I dye my hair. I'm actually
I have no hair.
grey.
So anyway, we'll compare ages
We'll
later,
take this
right?
later.
We'll take this offline. I
We
figure
will.
is what is the right phrase to say, isn't it?
But the company that I work for, we were early adopters of this software called Confluence and Jira. And we got it really cheap, as in $1 per user, because they were testing it. We were basically their prototype in the market. We were a tech company. We use Confluence for our intranet knowledge management. We use Jira actually for support tickets and internal management of escalation as well. And so the deal was it's $1 per user and you get access to all how it's working, feedback. We have to have regular monthly meetings. I don't need to tell you about the story of Atlassian, do I? But it also supported our company growth. And, you know, to this day, you know, I always say choose carefully and manage that risk. But sometimes being an early adopter can be a really good thing. And that was a great point of difference for our company. And really sort of enabled us to support our clients in a much better way than they were being supported in that environment a long time ago. You're talking 18 years ago now.
So we're going to move on to questions from the audience. If anyone's got questions for the experts here? No?
Well, I'll leave a thing on that. I've got a point on that. Is in terms of marketing, it's really interesting. A online course I did, I think it was last year before, they all meld into one now, was about life cycles of marketing channels. So, yeah, like Facebook ads, you used to be able to buy them dirt cheap, and now they're quite a premium ad slot to purchase, not compared to certain other ones, but you used to be able to get insane ROI purchasing ads on Facebook, and being able to be on top of industry trends and find out where you can get these, well, what platforms are offering cheap ads or cheap users or have these open platforms is really important. So the example we went through at that course and at the time was Slack, which we all use at RMIT online to collaborate between the students. And the idea there was if you wanted to build a business or a startup that has the aim of getting millions of users, one of the best ways is to build it on an existing system while that system's still in the open phase. So for Facebook, that would be the Cambridge Analytica phase. One of my friends built an app for people to find out what music to go to, using like the same APIs that Cambridge Analytica did. When Facebook was all nice and like, yeah, we want you to build stuff on our ecosystem. We're all nice and open. We'll let you have access to all our APIs. Use our user graph. But then that slowly closes over time. So yeah, having these opportunities to build or to leverage systems while they're in their growth phase is really important. So both on a marketing point of view, in terms of being able to buy really cheap ad slots, and product point of view, in terms of being able to leverage their systems, hopefully build up a bit of brand recognition, and then as they all get freaked out by people either using their data for evil like Facebook did, or with Slack, them deciding, hey, the tool you've built is really cool, that's $5 per user per month, we're just going to build that ourselves and then cut the API off you. Being able to leverage those is really important. Well,
any questions at all before we close the night?
I come from healthcare industry. So
From sorry, what industry?
healthcare industry, hospitals, in IT background.
So you got lots of money.
No, not my question around data science, application of data science. Hospitals don't have database administrators. They're just surviving with what we have at the moment. So data science, I see a lot of opportunity of health data, and how do we best utilize data using BI, AI, or data scientists to do better prognosis, better diagnosis, or whatnot. There's so many opportunities while it's not there. Any business who is getting into that thing, and as you said, get on with them when they're starting this, or what opportunities do you see or tools do you see from your data science and data background that healthcare sector can use?
Yeah, so health would be somewhere that I'd be very unsure of working in terms of like the traditional roles because of all the legal requirements about it. So similar to last year we had GDPR come in, so a European privacy thing, which makes it really hard for people to gather marketing consent. They need to explicitly gather marketing consent when you perform marketing actions on people online to European citizens. On top of that, in advertising, we've also got ITP coming out, Intelligent Tracking Prevention, which is using your browser, so WebKit, which is what Safari and Mozilla Firefox are both forked off, have built a system which tries to identify in an incredibly smart way using machine learning what cookies you put on your sites related to ads, and then like cut the period of time that they exist on your browser for as much as possible. So I guess the relation of that to healthcare is every industry has its own certain challenges, and healthcare for me, it just has in traditional roles so many like legal things I'd be a bit scared about working in there. But there's certainly a lot of things like consumer health and health 2.0, like things like Apple Health, I think I'm really interested in quantitative self or being able to track those type of things. And I think that's maybe the grey area we can get away with a lot of, if you build up the skill set as a health professional, and have that data processing thing, and sensors are getting, like Internet of Things, sensors are getting cheaper than ever, you can really build some really cool health applications without worrying about a lot of the existing health data like issues that you might normally have to worry about. Things like the app I used to use on my phone was measured how restless your sleep was by using the gyro in the phone to understand like how much you were moving around at night.
Do you have to strap it to yourself?
You just put it on your mattress and just
detects the movement.
Yeah, detects the movement.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but I think those type of things where you've got a sensor that probably costs $2 off Alibaba or AliExpress. You probably use some uni level or like really easy stats tool, or even if you need a bigger model, better model, or you're the type of business that has enough data that you can use deep learning or one of the big data processing systems, you can get a lot of dominate the market through that. Those are things.
Jack, like the My Health system the government was trying, was it My Health?
Yeah. So that's the type of thing that I'd be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
because
shameful though, isn't it? It's terrible.
Why?
No.
Because in business, we all
It's
want our finger on the pulse of information. Everyone talks about finger on the pulse, right? I want that central point of information where I can gather all of the information about my client or my customer. So I actually get why that they want that any doctor or
To qualify, I was meaning in an
professional.
execution.
Execution
of
was
it
terrible.
is awful.
Yeah.
I get you.
But I get that. Even working in the not-for-profit space now, and NDIS, they're gathering, information from OTs and physios and psychs and speech therapists, and they're all paper form based, and they're scanning and they're uploading, and they're trying to sort of figure out a care plan, for an individual. But then they might go to another service and they have to do that all over again.
Yeah, that's the stuff for me that I think so much more important in the next 5 years than the machine learning and the AI is there's so many systems that we still need to improve. And even for one of the most daunting experiences you can have in a business is and this is what you get out of product roles, is watching videos of your customer service staff where listening to a customer like losing their crap, being super frustrated, like why isn't my thing being cancelled, and seeing someone screen of them swapping between 20 different systems that are all 40 years old, and trying to pull up all this paperwork and things
I've been
like
waiting
that.
for NBN for a month. And now the 4G's dropped out. Now I've got no internet.
Yeah.
And then I spent an hour on the phone today and I still can't get anywhere.
Yeah.
Like Telstra.
Poor old Telstra, there we go, 30, 40 minutes in, they get another go.
And
If
I
I
had
could,
to repeat your story.
Oh,
I had a central point.
yeah,
That'd be easier.
yeah,
Read
because
my notes.
all of those,
Work out where I'm at in that
none
journey.
of those systems talk to each other, and I mean, I think it's fair to say that
Yeah.
that an awful lot of industries, health being one of them, that at the moment they, to a degree, they are hamstrung by having a whole heap of legacy systems that don't integrate and don't speak to each other. However, what's coming? At the end of the day, what does a doctor? When a doctor does a diagnosis, she or he runs through essentially if this then this, if this then this, right? Around that type of stuff ultimately with a big enough data set can be done at least equally as well, if not better, by machinery. I've done some work recently with a top tier law firm who I'm under a very intense NDA with. So if there's one NDA you don't want to break, is the one you've got with a law firm. However, there's a whole bunch of stuff in that industry, not with this company, so I'm okay to talk about it, around case law, right? So very high paid lawyers, when they're asked for an opinion, basically go and look at a historic case law and come up with an opinion based on what's happened before. Well, again, with a big enough data set, machines can do that. With a big enough data set, machines can diagnose what the symptoms are. And notwithstanding the kind of tactical issues we have with systems not being able to speak to each other at a high level, if we can overcome the challenge of sucking that data into one particular place, a la Facebook, data is everything, and with a big enough data set, the smarts are already there to do a whole heap of stuff better than humans can do it.
And yeah, I think the best paid jobs are always going to be joining, pull the lever, Salesforce with Google, or these big enterprise systems. Joining them together was like probably, the best commercial opportunities you could have if you only care about money.
And that stuff's real cheap to do, right? So having the world's supply of servers is in terms of what it would have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is fantastically cheap. So new entrants to the market, if anyone that can unlock the challenge of getting a big enough data set can cut any current business off at the knees. So that's another prime consideration.
Question regarding design thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Design thinking. We know data is, most of the business have different systems for different purposes. When we install, we think only about, we are upgrading CRM system, we think only about CRM, how data is applied in CRM. But as a big business, we want to see every business, every system talking to each other in a business, and when we want data. So are we, as a mentors, are you pushing or saying that when you implement a system, don't think only about that system, also think about data integration with other systems that are going to come in future or that already exist. Don't just isolate yourself to the system you are working, like come on to project management.
Well, that's why you do a customer journey map.
Yes.
And system
Because
blueprinting
you
as well.
understand the touch points within the business, right? So there might be integration. So it's actually, you don't think about just the CRM. There might be finance integrations. There might be integrations with other systems. So you need to actually map out that experience and make sure that all of those points are integrated. You might get some efficiencies by getting rid of spreadsheets and other systems that become redundant because that system can do it for you. But today was a classic example. We're talking about Salesforce Communities. And by plugging that into a Salesforce instance, it almost removes the need for web development or website development in WordPress. So we use Communities to plug in to be able to update housing options for those with disabilities. So I could upload some photos, a description of a housing place. It would then match in the Salesforce database that particular property or room to a range of people with disabilities within a location. So, you know, that sort of all of a sudden made the website redundant because we were looking at another company to completely rehash your website, API in, didn't need to. So I think when you go through that customer journey exercise, you'll work out what works and what doesn't in terms of systems and processes. But it's not just about a CRM. It's about how everything else can effectively flow and try and create that one point of information, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I did a piece of work for a major retailer whose name begins with K, and we did a whole bunch of mapping. We did. I don't know if you're familiar with service blueprinting, but essentially like customer journey map. So you start with the customer journey map. So that's the customer layer. Then underneath that is a depiction of all the face-to-face interactions with staff, and then underneath that are a depiction of all the back-of-house stuff. So what other humans do, but aren't necessarily customer-facing. And underneath that is the technical touch points, so the systems that drive that. They're all along in swim lanes underneath each other. That's essentially service blueprint. So within the organisation, the IT department had made a perfectly reasonable decision to not integrate these two systems because one of them was like 2 years away from end of life, right? So I didn't want to drop $1 squillion in joining these two systems together because not going to make any sense. So they did a data dump from one system into another system, and it took 48, could take up to 48 hours because info squirted out of one system, hung around in the ether for a while, picked up by the other system, and off it goes. Map that as a service blueprint and run that up to the customer layer, and you find that at that point there's a massive amount of customer dissatisfaction because they're having to wait for up to 48 hours for something to happen. So if you take the IT, perfectly reasonable IT related view of it, it's a waste of money to integrate those systems. Well, maybe, but maybe not. If you map that as a service blueprint and take that up to, well, your major pain point here is with these customers. So following on from that, if you can put some kind of quantification around, well, how, are we losing customers? Are we, you know, what's that costing us? Yep. And you know, in broad terms, is the number up there that we're losing more or less than the number it would take us down there to integrate those two systems?
That's where Rob would probably come in and go, well, digital marketing, that's where marketing automation comes into play. Connecting with your customer over that 48-hour period to make them feel engaged until that event might happen.
Just sorry.
Apologies, I'm just conscious of time.
Just gave me the Oscars music.
We can surely continue these conversations on Slack with our community channels.
It's not much fun.
I'm just getting warmed up, Nosh.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can give us. We'd like to stay all night.
Oh, if only that was true.
You can tell the passion, right?
Well, thank you so much for the valuable insights that you've given all of us today. Thank you for coming out, taking time out from your schedule. Just a quick thank you, so if we could just pass one of these. And yeah,
are they all the same, or can I feel for the best one? And
maybe we could run some analytics on it. Yeah. Just a quick one, as we walk out of the building. If you just walk out, take the lifts, there's a green switch that will let you out. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. It was a great opportunity to put faces to names and see all of us. And yeah, it's absolutely amazing to have you here. I hope you've taken a lot from the event. And thank you very much for coming.
Give a round of applause.